So recently, Drake had to amend his complaint. Originally, he had submitted a complaint in regards to everything about Not Like Us, talking about the reactors. That's when he had brought up Kai Cenat. That's when he brought up all these other creators, YouTubers alike. He had talked about them. He had talked about everything going on at the Grammys, the Super Bowl. He had mentioned these things in his lawsuit, in his complaint, right? Well, eventually later on, there was some things discussed later on after he had submitted this originally, and he had to go back and was ordered to remove things. But as he and his lawyers were ordered to remove things from the lawsuit, they were also able to amend it and add things to it as well. Now, one of the key things that they were ordered to remove was the Stream Farm allegations. Now, that was a really big deal when this had came into fruition, because the Stream Farm allegations were something that Drake was constantly trying to push, was constantly trying to say was happening. And eventually the judge had told them to remove it by Rule 11. So they had to remove the Stream Farm allegations that they had put here as a reference. As you can see here, the reference is in regards to academics talking to somebody, some whistleblower, saying that he was someone that was able to boost the streams for Not Like Us. But in the video itself, DJ Academics himself questions the person's credibility. Not only that, it never mentioned UMG. He never mentioned UMG, and this wasn't a reliable source. So they were ordered by the judge to remove this. And of course, this is a big win for UMG, considering this is the only claim that Drake had in regards to Stream Farm allegations. They weren't credible. They weren't reliable. They didn't come from a reliable source, so they had them remove it. A big W for UMG and everybody else on that side. The fact that Drake's lawyer had to sit there and watch a 40-minute clip of academics talk to this guy and they made him remove it completely is crazy, bro. This guy sat there and watched a 45-minute video of academics just to go back later on and remove it. Another thing that ended up getting added to this lawsuit was the Grammys and something that occurred at the Grammys. Drake brings up the time where Lucien Grange was seen high-fiving Dr. Dre. It says here, after the recording won Record of the Year, which is Not Like Us, Sir Grange high-fived and hugged Lamar's longtime executive producer and musical mentor, Andre Romel Young, known professionally as Dr. Dre, while the recording played. On the Grammys official YouTube page, the clip featuring the high five does not contain the original audio of the recording, and they send all the links available for everybody to see that. So, of course, Drake is going to bring up the Grammys. Obviously, Kendrick Lamar had won multiple Grammys for Not Like Us. He brings up the time where Lucien Grange, the owner of UMG, whatever the case may be, had high-fived Dr. Dre in the crowd celebrating Kendrick Lamar's win. With posts like this, it was kind of obvious that people knew that this was going to be something that Drake was going to add to the lawsuit. A lot of people probably saw that a mile away when they had saw this clip surface online. But if you ask me, it looks like two people who have done business with Kendrick Lamar are celebrating Kendrick Lamar's win at the Grammys. Lucien and Dre are just celebrating Kendrick Lamar's victory. But of course, Drake is going to try to use this in court and try to say something otherwise. Another thing that he decided to mention, which I find very hilarious, was Joe Budden. He decided to mention the Joe Budden podcast. In this amended complaint, he says in June 2024, one podcast host stated, "Not only do I not care that he, Kendrick Lamar, used bots, but I knew he did." In a podcast clip posted to his YouTube channel on June 23rd, 2024, he continued, "Y'all didn't know that Kendrick used bots? You thought that this was just the first time, miraculously, that a Drake record ever had more dislikes than likes? Or you didn't know that that was bots? Bots to me was part of how to win the war versus Drake." And we know this is Joe Budden because they add the hyperlink to the Joe Budden podcast where it says Joe Budden doesn't care that Kendrick Lamar used bots. But you know what's so funny about Drake deciding to reference the Joe Budden podcast is that everybody is pointing out what Joe Budden's podcast says in the beginning. Now, I don't think that Drake has ever watched a full episode of Joe Budden's podcast, but if you ever have, this is what they say in the very beginning of every episode.
The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by this podcast, as well as its hosts, are for entertainment purposes only. I repeat, it is not serious. It is not real. No one is exposing, revealing, indicting, or telling you anything about themselves. Also, we do not encourage you to try this at home. We are trained professionals who do not have your best interests at heart, or our own. Enjoy the show.
Now, exactly what I said and exactly what I wanted to point out. This is how Joe Budden starts every single show. He tells you that it's for entertainment purposes only. He tells you that none of it is serious, none of it is real, and none of it is exposing, revealing, and indicting. I think indicting is the key word right here. So the fact that Drake is deciding to use a podcast where Joe Budden is openly admitting that none of this is real and none of it is supposed to be meant to be used to indict anyone, I don't know why Drake decides to go and use Joe Budden's podcast as reference when he himself is saying you shouldn't do that because none of this is serious. It's only for entertainment purposes only. Everything that Joe Budden could be chalked up as hearsay because no one could prove what Joe Budden is saying is true. But it was funny because everybody was talking about how Drake was using Joe Budden as a reference. Why would you use Joe Budden as a reference? When you mentioned Joe Budden in Taylor Made Freestyle, you had said this about Joe as well. In Tupac's AI voice, call him a biff for me. Talk about him liking him young. That's a gift for me. Heard it on the Budden podcast. It's got to be true. So as you can see here, heard it on the Budden podcast. It's got to be true. What did you hear on the Budden podcast? Talking about liking him young. I just think it's funny how Drake is using the Budden podcast as a reference when they've also referenced that Drake likes him young as well. That's what he said in Taylor Made Freestyle, talking about liking him young because he heard it on the Budden podcast. I don't know why Drake would use Joe Budden as a reference when Budden has referenced Drake liking him young also. I don't know what Drake was thinking here. But in all honesty, I don't know why Drake would bring up Joe Budden. Everything that Joe Budden says is hearsay. He's even saying that it's hearsay. And it just seems foolish to reference Joe Budden's podcast when you had lyrics like this in Taylor Made Freestyle talking about Budden's podcast, where they're saying questionable things about you. Now, the list goes on. Obviously, they talk about Kendrick Lamar, the Super Bowl. They had to remove a lot of things. As you can see here, they removed a lot of things from the lawsuit. They had to remove a lot of things. It wasn't just 5 paragraphs. You know, Drake's lawyer had tried to say, oh, it's just 5 paragraphs that we have to take it. No, they took out a lot, bro. I'm scrolling nonstop and they removed a lot of stuff, bro. They had to take off a lot of things, bro. And whatever they removed, they added a whole bunch of baseless allegations, a whole bunch of baseless hyperlinks. Really don't take you anywhere. That doesn't really have any relevance. After a while, Drake and his lawyers just keep bringing up the Super Bowl, the accolades for the Super Bowl, how many people watched it. They also talked about Kendrick Lamar's YouTube channel. They mentioned his channel directly, basically doubling down on the Super Bowl, the Grammys, and everything else in between at this point. If anything, I feel like they removed a lot of stuff and added a lot of baseless allegations with all of these new hyperlinks that you had saw on the screen. But the minute that Drake decided to amend his lawsuit and finally submit it, it looks like UMG did not waste any time responding to what he had just amended. UMG decided to respond to Drake by saying this statement right here. They said, UMG warns Drake to be careful what you wish for in new statement over the ongoing legal battle. They said, Drake, unquestionably one of the world's most accomplished artists and with whom we've enjoyed a 16-year successful relationship, is being misled by his legal representatives into taking one absurd legal step after another. In Texas last November, his counsel instituted a legal proceeding with much fanfare and bluster. On Monday, they quietly dropped the case. In New York in January, Drake's counsel filed a defamation lawsuit. Fearful of being sanctioned by the court for asserting false allegations, tonight they amended the complaint to withdraw them only to add more baseless allegations. 2 weeks ago, his representatives celebrated a win, the granting of a routine discovery motion. That win will become a loss if the frivolous and reckless lawsuit is not dropped in its entirety, because Drake will personally be subject to a discovery as well. As the old saying goes, be careful what you wish for. Both the Texas and New York proceedings are an affront to all these artists and creative expressions. Should his legal representatives senselessly keep the New York lawsuit alive, we will demonstrate that all the remaining claims are without merit. It is shameful that these foolish and frivolous legal theatrics continue. They are reputationally and financially costly to Drake and have no chance of success. And obviously, the key thing to take away here is be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. The win that they're talking about is when Drake was granted the discovery to exchange information with UMG. That's when Drake was asking for the contracts. That's when he was asking for personal information, emails, all of this, right? UMG is doubling down and letting you know that this win is going to turn into a loss, because it goes both ways. If you get information, we get information. And that's something you don't want to do. UMG has done things, has mentioned things, I think, to make Drake feel uncomfortable, or maybe to make Drake feel some type of way, referencing things such as the incident on stage, the Millie Bobby Brown situation. They have mentioned these things in their lawsuit. And I feel like they have mentioned those things as a warning, letting Drake know we're not afraid to bring these type of things up. But them mentioning it, they never really gave him a cautionary warning. It was kind of like implied that we could bring things up that you probably didn't think that we would. They're not afraid to say things that could probably alarm Drake in his mind, but they never really said anything as an outright warning. This right here is a straight up warning. This is letting them know to be cautious how you move moving forward. That discovery that you requested, you thought that was a win, that could turn into a loss when you find out what we're going to ask from you with your discovery. When we ask from the discovery from Drake, what is UMG going to ask for? What information are they going to ask for? Time, place, locations, people. Who will they bring up when they ask for the discovery from Drake? You see, this is still a warning, though. They're telling Drake, if you keep going, we're going to keep going further. And that's something you don't want to do. Either they're going to bring up something, and UMG has worked with Drake for 16 years. I think that's the whole point of them bringing that up in the first place. We've had a relationship with him for 16 years. If there's anybody that knows the skeletons in his closet, it's going to be UMG. Drake's lawyers only know what he tells them. Drake's lawyer doesn't know everything about Drake and the relationship that he has with UMG. He doesn't know the secrets that UMG knows about Drake, and he doesn't know anything unless Drake tells him. This right here is a warning. Should his legal representative sensibly keep the New York lawsuit alive, we will demonstrate that all remaining claims are without merit. It's shameful that these foolish, frivolous legal tactics continue. They are costly to Drake, and he has no chance. Reading between the lines, they're saying stop now because Drake can't afford to go any further, and he's not ready for us to reveal what we can if we ask for information from him for a discovery. I think UMG was being very indirect with their warnings in the beginning. This right here is a straight up warning, bro. This right here is a straight up watch your step, watch what you do next. I think that Drake's lawyer is convincing Drake that he has an argument. I think Drake's lawyer keeps saying, hey, man, I think we got a battle. I think we got to win. I think we could win this. And I think he's feeding Drake this false hope that this lawsuit is going to win, that he's going to win this lawsuit. But realistically, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. From the outside looking in, it doesn't look like they're going to win at all. It looks like his lawyer is causing him more trouble than anticipated. And UMG is telling him to stop listening to his lawyer and start thinking for himself before it gets worse. What do you think that UMG knows about Drake in their 16-year relationship? What do you think that they could bring up that could cause Drake to back down? Do you think that Drake will back down? Do you think that he'll still continue going forward? Do you think the lawyer, Drake's lawyer, will continue to feed things in his ear, make him think that he could win this case? From what I saw in the amended lawsuit and from what I saw from the things that were added, I don't think that it really would make a difference. They removed the stream farm allegations and everything else added just seems very frivolous, like UMG had said. This thing is just starting to look one-sided. It looks like UMG is about to win this case. And at this point, it looks like they just want Drake to stop before they have to ruin whatever relationship they had built for the past 15 years. But y'all tell me how you feel about this in the comments and get back to me, man. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video, man. Peace. Keep it alleged.